Hello, everyone. Greetings. Welcome to Midlife podcast. I am your very lucky host, Jessie Cates. It's great to connect to you here digitally. I am a fellow perimenopausal female and a menopause coaching specialist. That means that I went through my own arduous journey of suffering in my body the year I turned 42, couldn't find any answers, and then decided that I needed to really seek out proper education so that I could find the proper support to end and ease the suffering that I was experiencing in my body and mind. Long story short, now here we are sharing this information with you in this podcast so that you too can take agency and control over your own experience, reduce and eliminate your suffering, and reclaim joy in your body in midlife. Today, this episode is dedicated to, of all things, defining perimenopause. A simple place to start because many people have no idea. I know I definitely didn't when it smacked me in the face the year I turned 42. So let's unpack what this is. Perimenopause is a very interesting mystery in women's bodies. I was shocked to find that I was existing for about 4 decades on this earth and had no idea that this thing existed and was inevitably destined to happen inside my body because I still have working ovaries. I had no idea. And I bet many of you out there don't either. So this is dedicated to all of us out there having more knowledge and information about our own freaking bodies so that we can live in them with more joy and awareness. Perimenopause, I have learned through my travels, is a period of time before a woman's cycle ends, where her body is beginning to prepare for the removal of all reproductive responsibilities. At some point in time in our lives, our brain turns on our reproductive system, and then we have the gift of the freedom to choose if we want to use it or not. Some people do, some people do not. Either way, we have a steady flow of this idea of reproductive energy that is fed primarily by a hormone called estrogen. Estrogen is actually an inflammatory, protecting, magical wonder that exists inside all of our bodies, and we have it in every aspect of ourselves. It's not just a reproductive hormone. It feeds all of the systems. There are estrogen receptors in your gut, in your bladder, in your joints, in your brain, to name a few really wild and interesting places that you wouldn't think of. When we start to enter into this experience of perimenopause, it is our body slowly preparing to wind down and close up the ovary shop. So since we're going to close up the ovary shop, the body decides, well, the brain decides that we are going to start to have some changes occur somewhere around, and it's different for everyone. But what we know from science is that the peak in a female body is somewhere around 35, meaning we have kind of climbed the ladder of our womanhood, and this is the peak where our bones are the strongest. We have the most muscle tone we're going to have, the most lean muscle mass we'll have on our frame. And then somewhere around this 35-year-old age, we then begin to take a change and a journey into midlife. Society spins this as a bad thing, like, poof, we're down, we're going the other way, we're off our prime, we're off our game. And this is something many of us women have, um, kind of been that message delivered into us. And it's not a message that we necessarily subscribe to, but it's one that we meet in our bodies. This idea that we should shrivel up and go away after we reproduce. So perimenopause then becomes a really interesting time because we feel this peak. Many people will feel really vibrant and they feel like maybe they got their life figured out somewhere around 35. Maybe they feel like, all right, I've figured out how to operate in this body. And we feel like it's going to be smooth sailing for the next, 20, 30 years before we have to start to worry about kind of old age problems over down on the other side of a lifetime spectrum. Then a couple years later, there can be a big shift inside a woman's body. On average, between the ages of like 40 and 45, lots of women will get smacked in the face by the timeline experience of perimenopause. Perimenopause is defined as this period in time, can begin as early as 35, believe it or not, can begin as late 40s, 45, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it is a period where during this time, our ovaries have been producing a steady flow of hormones through our system. The brain is controlling the release and distribution of said hormones. But after 35, we start to see a reduction in the supply that we were born with. And believe it or not, by the time we reach 40, we have only about 3% left of working eggs in our system. So the body starts to realize we don't really need all of the responses for this role of reproduction. So at some point in time, with this change occurring, there is a breakdown in communication, is a good way to look at it, between the ovaries and the brain. The experience of going through perimenopause, being classified as menopause, and being in the time of postmenopause, all of this, when we talk about it kind of loosely, we refer to it as the menopause experience, or being in your menopausal era is a way I like to commonly refer to it, because it helps me kind of reclaim some joy and empowerment around it, that it's this menopausal era in my life. But the perimenopause experience can be a long stretch for many gals. What begins to happen is basically the brain has been sending a message down to the ovaries to reduce or to release estrogen during particular phases in our cycle. And the ovaries always respond. Somewhere after 35, definitely around 40 and beyond, the brain is still asking the ovaries to send estrogen, but the ovaries have been slowly reducing their supply and they don't really have the estrogen to send. So this message from the brain down to the ovaries and then the ovaries responding starts to short circuit. Short circuiting is the perimenopause experience. So the brain not receiving the estrogen that it's been used to receiving thinks something's not working. Imagine you being on your phone, pressing a button to do something that you always do, and the screen doesn't work and the button doesn't seem to do what it does. So what do? You keep pressing the button, hoping something's going to change. This is what's happening in our brain during perimenopause. Our brain's pressing the button for estrogen that normally gets sent by the ovaries. The ovaries like, sorry, dude, I'm closing up shop down here. You're going to have to deal with it. And the brain's like, no, 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 keep sending the estrogen. And it doesn't have it to give. So then what begins to unfold is a waterfall of destruction that we can experience in our body and our mind. And these become the symptoms of this brain and ovary short circuit. So perimenopause has long been thought about, menopause stuff in general has long been thought about as an OBGYN concern or a reproductive issue, when really we know this is occurring in the neuroendocrine system. So because it's occurring in the brain as well, it actually then can be classified as a total body experience. But since society thinks of it as just an ovary problem, this is why many of us don't have education, knowledge, and awareness around this thing happening in our body. And this is definitely why many of us will go and seek out help. And our doctors and specialists have no idea what to do because they weren't given any training or education, because it's thought of as an ovary and an OBGYN problem. So cardiologist isn't going to be trained on it. A orthopedic surgeon isn't going to be trained on it. And anybody else that you go to looking for relief in your 40s when you start to suffer from things occurring from your brain and your ovaries glitching, most specialists or doctors you might find struggle to offer support. So back on track here. perimenopause starts to be a wild ride for some people. Some will have no issues whatsoever, but there is a list of 34 recognized symptoms of perimenopause. I'm going to put those up on this screen so we can read through what those are. Okay, so up on your screen is actually a page from my super amazing ebook on the Girlfriend's Guide to Navigating Menopause with Grace. And you can see in the pink box on the right side of the page the list of medically recognized symptoms of menopause. There are 34. They are things like hot flushes, night sweats, irregular periods, weight changes, breast tenderness, mood changes, irritability, depression, anxiety, panic disorder, sleep issues, fatigue, lessened libido, headaches, vaginal dryness, thinning hair, body odor, brittle nails, bloating and digestive issues, brain fog and memory problems, joint pain, muscle aches, osteoporosis, itchy skin, dizziness, heart palpitations, burning mouth and tongue, changed sense of smell, tingling limbs, shock-like sensations, allergies, and urinary changes. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's just take a moment to kind of pause and send some love out to anyone with working ovaries over the age of 35, because that list is no joke. And I can speak from a firsthand experience that I've had pretty much everything on that list, except for like maybe 3 or 4. So the struggles of perimenopause are widespread. They're not just issues in the vagina or issues with your menstrual cycle. They are widespread, from itching skin to anxiety and depression to weight gain to body aches and pains. I mean, it is an extensive list of things that we wouldn't think of because we're not properly told about what perimenopause is. The reason we are experiencing all of these symptoms all over the place is because the brain's not being fed anymore with the steady flow of estrogen like it's used to, and it feeds on estrogen, as well as sugars. And it is like, not, you know how you act when you're hangry. I mean, it's a similar thing in our body. Our brain is having trouble. It does not have the fuel it's normally used to, and it's creating short circuiting and glitching and all sorts of issues. And since the brain, as we know, is the helm of the ship, the ship's going to go down in many cases for some women. Perimenopause can be mild to extreme, and there's no way we've been able to see any kind of study that says what is going to constitute what someone gets, if it's an easy run or a difficult one. I haven't seen anything that really says if you can predict that in any way, shape, or form. But perimenopause eventually becomes menopause, and that is determined by 12 missed periods in a row. Some women will experience fluctuations in their cycle. They'll go for stretches of time without receiving any menstrual cycle, and then it'll come and show up, and then it'll disappear for a while. A lot of women will have that fluctuation. For some, it'll go 12 months in a row and stop. If your cycle goes 11 months and then it comes in month 12, you start the clock back over. So eventually you're going to have 12 missed cycles in a row. And during this time, you can have all sorts of changes in the fluctuations of your perimenopausal symptoms. Some might be strong during some periods, go away. Others might be steady throughout. Some might get better when they were worse to start, or vice versa. It is a wild ride, my dear, lovely ladies. Buckle up. This is why it can be super important and empowering and helpful to have a menopausal bestie who's got some resources and some tools, which I share in this podcast for you, so that you can make informed decisions and help support your body and mind to the best of your ability. Once we are classified in menopause, then our perimenopausal stage of the journey has come to an end. And we have officially ended the wild fluctuations of our estrogen flow. And we have begun to really see the drop off, the decline, and the bottom out, which ultimately will wrap up 2 to 4 years on average. Most women will, in the United States, will menopause around 50, 51, 52. And then you'll see a 2 to 4 year kind of like leveling out and finishing up of the entire process. But from that day on, then we enter into a postmenopausal era, and we are postmenopausal until the day of our death. But perimenopause is a legit real thing. We could really sum up perimenopause in a nutshell in the easiest and most succinct way possible. We could basically say that because we're losing our inflammatory protection from our estrogen, really perimenopause is a period of system-wide inflammation in our body and our mind. So to support ourselves in this experience is really about learning to manage, navigate, and support system-wide inflammation. What does our brain, our body, our gut, what do all the systems of our body need when they are inflamed? And really, that is the best way that we can lean in to support ourselves. Perimenopause is a period of system-wide inflammation in our bodies and minds. Many women will struggle, many will not, and many will go seeking help, answers, and support, mostly to doctors. And in many cases, women will be let down, disappointed, sent home being told they're fine, told they're too young to be going through menopause. Some women will come to their doctor and say, could it be this? And a lot of women will get dismissed. This isn't the case for all. There are places that you can go to find a menopause-informed physician. There is a really great resource out there if you want to make sure that you are in the care of a menopause-certified, informed specialist or OBGYN or provider. The North American Menopause Society has a list, and it is accessible online, menopause.org, and it allows you to search for a provider who is informed and educated and certified by this Menopause Society, that they meet the standards of care and they know and they will be able to support and take care of women who come looking for support to care for their bodies and their minds. The good thing to know is that you are not alone. All of us with working ovaries will go through this experience. Our experiences will be vastly different, but many of us, it can be a time of suffering, but it does not have to be a terrible time. We will experience things in our body and our mind because of this change that we are going through. But you need to know from a menopause expert that you do not have to suffer. There are things that we can do in our own sphere, in our own home, with support strategies in categories like sleep, self-care strategies, nutrition strategies, movement strategies, pharma strategies, and girlfriend social support, and circle kind of love and support in a social sphere to really make this journey rich and meaningful and beautiful. So even though there is a lot of suffering for some on the perimenopausal experience, I suffered deeply for a year myself before I got aware of what I was going through. Then went down the rabbit hole of education, got deeply obsessed, went even further to get educated and certified in it so that I could help women in my orbit feel better. I took everything that I went through and everything that I learned, and I applied all of those strategies to my own self, and my body and mind did a complete turnaround. And now I am smack dab in the middle of my perimenopausal road, and I feel spectacular. I no longer am suffering. I have been able to manage and mitigate many of my symptoms, make many of them go away entirely, and make some of the ones that were more severe so mild now that they no longer cripple me or consume my life. And if you want some help and support in that arena, you can head to the link below and get my ebook and find that support right there at your fingertips to support your own self. So I hope that your journey is unfolding in a way that has landed you here looking for information and support. And I hope that you'll take this little bit of awareness of what perimenopause is and dive in to discover what it is that you can do to support yourself using information and support from certified menopause specialists like myself so that you can reclaim your vibrancy and livelihood and thrive in this transition. It's not doom and gloom. It is a wonderful time where we become freer, we become more spacious within ourselves, and it's time to reclaim that. It's time to step into that and really rock the heck out of this perimenopausal roller coaster. Love to each of you. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next episode.